Welcome back. You're watching this check, of course, live from Broadcasting House. Great discussions on it happen here on KBC Channel 1. This morning we are focusing on the real estate industry with a question, what is the future of this critical sector going into the future? Significant challenges, have been witnessed in the past 3 years or so, and the 2 years or 3 are likely also to be challenging. That is according to Shiv, Arora, who is guiding us in this discussion. Before we went for the break, I was asking you which counties are likely to drive growth going forward, and you have just said, the traditional 5 or 6 counties of Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Machakos, Athi River. I mean, not Athi River, but Kajiado. Kajiado is where we have Ongata Rongai, right? Yeah. Yes. And of course, Kiambu County here. So how then do we ensure, that we spread growth in other counties, in a country with more than 45 counties? You cannot just concentrate on 6 or 7 counties, right?
That's very, very true. What real estate developers will do is generally follow infrastructure throughout an economy. When they're looking at roads, water, power, commuter rail, mass transport, availability of raw materials. So if you want institutional developers to move into counties like that, the infrastructure has to be provided to enable them to be able to build and deliver units to the market. Otherwise, you will continue seeing what you always have, which is almost like an informal real estate development that just pops up in different places without a lot of urban planning. So the counties that we've mentioned, and look, there's others. There's Kilifi County, there's Eldoret. We're seeing Meru, Embu sides growing as well. So the Mount Kenya region is starting to do well. Nanyuki is becoming an attractive real estate destination. So they are, I would say, 10 or 12 counties that are doing it well, and
but
creating an infrastructure.
It's more of hospitality and commercial space, right?
Yes, it's hospitality, commercial space, but as the town itself grows, there's going to be demand for real estate and from a residential perspective. So even if hospitality is the first mover in there, it's only natural that everything else follows. The people in the hospitality industry are going to need residential real estate. There's going to need commercial offices. You're going to need retail malls to support that. So generally sectors then do start to follow one another. And the hospitality sector, we can't take away the impact that it has on the economy. Tourism is one of our greatest sectors. We have to continue investing in real estate that supports tourism.
You were talking about, mortgage of about 22,000 accounts, in a country of almost 50 million people. That's quite, a pittance. Is a drop actually in the ocean. And bearing in mind that the banking sector, is also going through another phase whereby, the number of or the portfolio of NPL has somehow jumped to 14%, and so they're also likely to be very, very cautious as to who they give loans to. So we're likely to see some sort of a stagnation in the issuance of mortgages. How then do we ensure that, going forward, we stimulate this market?
In terms of issuance of mortgages, especially from where we sit, it's not been completely untoward in that there's been a decline. Banks are becoming more and more, I would say, stringent in terms of their lending. But remember, mortgages are also good because they extend out a bank's loan book, and it's income that you have visibility of for quite a long period of time. Where the Kenyan economy has also been, there's been a lot of payments which have been made, off plan, so you pay over the construction period. You do installment payments, you take extended payment plans in order to complete, because a lot of people are in business, so they're not necessarily looking to borrow. So that side of the economy will continue to remain remain vibrant. It's really upon, banking sector players to look back and say, how do we create an environment where we can continue to lend? But I think from where they are today, we have been seeing issuance of mortgages for good properties. And banks will now start to really issue mortgages out on properties that are, institutional grade developments, rather than those done in the informal sector.
And we have also seen, before, the pandemic, we also saw, cooperative societies, also venturing into this market, and offering low-priced mortgages, to their clients. But this somehow has been complicated because of COVID-19. Do you see them, at some point, getting back to this business and becoming more aggressive? Definitely.
When you look at even where COVID-19 is and where businesses are now coming in towards 2021, and we saw it in January, you can see it every day out on the streets, on the roads, businesses, vibrancy in the market, retail, commercial. Things are starting to pick up again. So a lot of people are going to be playing catch up. These lending channels away from the traditional banking sector, SACCOs, CHAMAs, and the rest, are really going to start to, housing cooperatives are going to start to grow and create a lot of interest for their clients. The government's also doing a lot of work on their affordable housing scheme. We're seeing a lot of developments come to fruition, which is good to see because, we had a goal for the government and the president's Big Four agenda. So it's nice to see, government putting in that sort of support and actually driving these going forward. Yeah.
And talking about, the Big Four agenda on housing, and we know that a few units, are ready for occupation, but there has been challenge in terms of, the private sector, coming on board and taking up, the space of affordable housing. Why do you think the private sector is not very keen on jumping on board the private sector basket?
There's a couple of reasons. The first is there's always a gap between private sector's time for return on capital versus public sector. Private sector cannot wait 10, 12 years to start seeing their money back. It's very, very difficult. The second is, you can create the supply, but is there the demand? Remember, the issue, and when we look at it from a private sector perspective, even if you're taking a mortgage for like 3 million shillings, you first have to put down 10 to 20%. So where is someone going to get 300 to 600,000? That's still not been, I would say, conclusively addressed. Then at the same time, if your mortgage payments are, 40, 50,000 shillings per month, it's not really dealing with the affordable housing issue, because for someone to be able to pay 50,000 shillings per month in mortgage means that their household income is probably 100 to 150,000. So you're not necessarily dealing, even if you're taking a 2 million shilling house and paying over a period of time, you're still looking at mortgage payments of 25,000 to 30,000 shillings every month. It's a lot of money. Where is the opportunity in converting a renter to an owner? And now the renter, who you're targeting, is probably paying between 10 to 15,000 shillings every month in terms of rent. Can they now afford 25 to 30,000 shillings in terms of mortgage? And can they afford the 10 to 20% down payment that is required for them to access the mortgage? So that's where private sector, I think, is still not convinced. And once they get convinced of that, because ultimately you build for demand, you build for offtake. If there's a way in which this can be boosted, we're seeing KMRC do some good work. They've been able to raise capital. Ultimately, KMRC will have to function just like any other business. They're going to have to raise commercial capital and lend it out. But I think those are the key areas. It's return on capital. How much time? Can people access the down payment? And then can people pay the mortgage? So you don't want to be in a situation where you're taking market risk and you're also taking credit risk.
When the government announced that, the Park Road project, about 300 units were ready for occupation. According to the Ministry of Housing, more than 40,000 people, showed interest or were ready to put their money into these units, that were going for 2 million shillings for a 2-bedroom, and I think 2.4 for 3 bedrooms. So that shows that the interest is there, the appetite is there.
Yep.
The fundamental issues that you are raising are, is there a well-researched and a well-thought-out idea on how these people are likely to pay, going forward? Because, yeah, you may have even the interest, but that does not translate into money. And so how do you create demand and at the same time you empower people to go for this demand as well?
Look, there's got to be a couple of ways in which you do it. There has to be a program through which people are going to be able to afford their down payments on their units. Unless there is that sort of a program that does come into the market, it's going to be very, very difficult. KMRC now needs to come out and really look at, what are they going to underwrite in terms of their loans going out into the market to enable spending for affordable housing mortgages. At the same time, there needs to be development of the capital markets. I mean, we recently saw a firm like Acorn come into the market with a REIT on student housing. Centum has come out into the market and taken a 3 billion shilling bond, which has been listed as well. Those are really, really positive developments, but those are positive developments on the supply side.
Yeah.
There needs to be similar strengthening of the capital markets on the demand side. So that, yeah, there is the traditional bank avenues and you have your SACCOs and the rest, which play a very, very vital role in the economy. But the rest of the real estate market needs to be supported by, alternative finance mechanisms, which comes from the capital markets. Yeah.
And the role of, the Kenya Mortgage Refinancing Company, I mean, is yet to come out clear, and we had to feel the impact of KMRC into the Kenyan mortgage market. Do you feel like the government is dragging its feet when it's come to creating that impact into the mortgage market through KMRC?
I think they could be quicker in terms of their impact into the economy. They could also communicate better, because there could be a lot of work going on behind the scenes which a lot of people don't know about. So not necessarily sure it's dragging their feet, but yeah, we'd like to know what are the steps that you guys are taking towards rolling this program out successfully, and KMRC actually being a successful standalone business on its own. So there is need for more information sharing and possibly even conclaves or focus groups with developers, asking them what are your challenges, and if we address these things, will you participate? And a lot of people will, because they just want an opportunity. Real estate is a business where institutional developers look to de-risk themselves, through demand that is tangible. So even the interest that we're talking about for the affordable housing space, is it verified interest? Do those people have down payments? Do they have cash in the bank to be able to make the deposit? Do they have the household income to secure? Have they got an employment contract which will allow them to get a mortgage? So, when you actually buckle down into the details, you'll realize that, how true or what quality is the demand. Yeah.
And we have also seen, the review of the Pension Act, whereby now people can, or workers, can use their pension, to secure a mortgage and to put up a house. But probably, maybe one might argue that it is too soon, but you would have expected to see, employees, jumping onto this opportunity, dashing, to mortgage companies and banks as well, to try and access mortgage through their pension. But this is not somehow happening. Why do you think this is the reason?
A lot of the employees that are pensionable in this market and have pensions large enough to afford a mortgage can probably get a mortgage anyway. So is it a benefit?
So they don't need their pension to do this.
Is it a benefit? For sure. Will it spur demand? Yeah. And is it a step in the right direction? Definitely. But you've got to look at it realistically and ask yourself that these people who have pensions to afford a 10 million, 15 million shilling. I've got 10, 15 million shillings in my pension. Or even 5, 6 million shillings in my pension. I could probably afford a mortgage anyway. So it could be a case of from the same bucket. I don't know well enough in terms of the demographics for that sort of industry, what is the size, what's the average pocket size, because that would be interesting data to have. But is it a step in the right direction? That's what's important, you know, that let people access their pensions to buy a home or to build their home, but also build their home in an institutional manner, you know, something which is the right structure, it's rightly approved, and the rest. So it's actually a home and a place of residence, you know.
Well, you're talking about, you know, people who can actually avoid, you know, a mortgage using their pension. And of course, you're right. I mean, you know, in a country whereby, you know, on average, you know, the average cost of a house will be between 6 to 5 million, 6 to 8 million Kenya shillings. You don't have such a huge pool of people who earn, you know, these, you know, a salary that will be able to allow them to borrow against their pension this significant amount of money. So the question is, what then do we need to do to ensure that we bring down the cost of houses in this country, so that, you know, you enlarge and increase the uptake pool?
Where it will help with the pension side, and it's a point that we missed, is, you know, that initial 10-20% that you need to be able to get a mortgage off your payroll. That's where your pension will really come and help you, because, you know, maybe you've got that money in your pension but not in your savings, or in an account that's accessible for you, so you will use your pension funds to access it. There's been a lot of debate as to, you know, can you deliver houses at 2 million, 3 million, 4 million Kenya shillings? Ask any institutional developer, and, you know, unless their land is very, very cheap and they're able to drive their construction costs low and really make a lot of savings in terms of density, in terms of quality of finishes and the rest, it's very, very difficult to achieve a product at that price point. So can a product be delivered at, you know, 3 to 4 million shillings? For sure, from an institutional developer, in a large scale basis. You know, other than that, very, very few players, unless you're sitting on very, very cheap land, will be able to deliver housing like that, you know.
Going forward, I mean, what do you think, what interventions do you see the private sector, or do you believe the private sector should make, as well as the public sector, in a bid to bring down, you know, the cost of houses in this country? And number two, increase the number of residential units on offer, especially to other counties. And number four, increase the pool of people who have disposable income that can afford them, you know, mortgage, as well as money to acquire a home.
Look, there's obviously looking at infrastructure, where it's going and where is the demand going to be. In terms of driving down the prices of houses, there's obviously need to look at much more innovative solutions in terms of housing. How can you put in place, you know, even things like precast? How do you bring in different types of building materials? How do you make your machinery work more efficiently for you? How do you take less time towards putting up a unit? So if you're going to build a house over, say, 9 to 12 months, how can you now build a unit over 2 to 3 months or 6 months? Because time at the end of the day is money, especially if you're financing those units, and that should drive the cost down. But the focus also has to be, look, how can developers put in place tenant purchase schemes to allow people, you know, models where they can, you know, pay over a very, very long time. But are people willing to take that credit risk is another question. So unless there's huge interventions in terms of creating a real tangible demand for these units, you know, it's going to continue the way it is at the moment, where people will be buying off cash plans, installment plans, off plan, and then delivering units to the market. Yeah.
And who is supposed to do that?
There's going to be a lot of private sector work, but at least government is now, you know, really putting in place a good strategy for their real estate side. We're seeing it with the Affordable Housing Project. We're seeing it with KMRC. We're seeing it with laws such as the pension laws, which are changing and making it, you know, at least they're trying to spur demand in the economy, and that's all that you can do. Government's job is to create an enabling environment for private sector to function, right? And there needs to be more of those initiatives which create an enabling environment for private sector to deliver, because we're all in private sector. We do want to deliver. We're not sitting here and saying, oh, we don't want to build houses. No one in their right mind would say that. And the more houses I can build and the more houses I can sell, it's better for me. But there's got to be an enabling environment. No, the infrastructure has to be there. Water has to be reliable. Power has to be reliable. A lot of your costs, even in real estate, is, putting in place backup water, backup power,
backup security, improving infrastructure
around the area. If you're just servicing land, it can cost you 5 to 6 million shillings per acre just to service it. So that in itself is a place where you can save developers a lot of cost. Creating the necessary infrastructure to allow private sector to go in there and just move. Yeah.
And we have also seen, this market because of, a high demand of houses in this country. We have also seen, unscrupulous business people, coming into the markets, exploiting, the existing demand, by offering them projects that only exist on paper. And these are somehow eroded the confidence of people, in contractors and project managers. How do we deal with these?
From a real estate buyer perspective, that's a very unfortunate place to be. You've got to look at the track record of a real estate developer. Have they delivered this thing over 10, 15 years? Today, Superior Homes can put out units into the market and they're taken, even if it's off plan, because people can see construction progress going on and they can see what we are delivering to the market. And until and unless you are sure on the track record of the developer and you have seen their previous projects that have been done, and you've seen that they're actually mobilizing on the ground, you can go to site, you can do your due diligence, you can speak to contractors, you can speak to the locals around the area and ask, is so-and-so developer actually moving into this area and building? If you can see their approvals with NEMA and the National Construction Authority for their buildings, at that point in time, you can say that, all right, this is an off-plan developer I can trust. But buyers need to really put a lot more work into making sure that they spend time to understand the counterparty that they're dealing with.
But we have also seen, some companies that have been big in the market, facing some challenges when it's come to delivery of units. Yeah, investors have paid their money, but the project, takes 3-4 years, before they're delivered, leading into endless litigations. How do we bring sanity and how do we bring confidence, in this market?
I think there's confidence in the market. I think what you're talking about is just a few isolated cases, and unfortunately, that generally tends to tarnish the industry. A delayed project is better than no project at all. That's what I always tell people. It's a difficult economy that people operate in. COVID put a lot of people off as well. Developers were not able to develop at the same pace that they used to before. But if you generally have seen a developer deliver over 10, 15 years and deliver projects to you consistently, deliver units to you consistently, that really, really helps boost confidence. And there's going to come a point when clients and developers will work together towards actualizing projects that have maybe stalled or taken a little bit of time to get off the ground, because that's the only way that everyone's interests get ultimately protected. Yeah.
Shiv, is there anything else that we have left out?
I'll just say thank you very much for having us, and we're looking forward to not only growth in the real estate sector, but growth in all sectors of the economy. Because each sector sort of supports one another. When tourism does well, real estate does well. When agriculture does well, real estate does well. And when tourism does well, agriculture does well. So we need to see growth within the economy. It's nice to see that at least the vaccine has started coming into play. So however quickly we can get people vaccinated and get life back to, I guess, a new normal, it will be great for the economy. Thank you very much.
Asante sana. Thank you for your time, Shiv.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.
Shiv Arora is the CEO of Superior Homes, joining us here on Base Check to discuss the current state of the real estate industry in Kenya, the future, and of course how to turn things around. You have heard it from him. O'Brien Kimani is my name. You're watching us live from Broadcasting House at O'Brien Kimani. This is my Twitter handle. This is Biz Check, where we go to all the counties to see what exactly is happening there.